Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. The Last Breath bar reeked of old synth liquor, rusted metal, and quiet desperation. It was the kind of place where stories ended, not began, where lost souls drifted in with too much history and not enough future. Kale Reiner wiped down the counter with a rag older than most of his regulars. Not because it needed cleaning, but because routine was safer than memory. Outside the reinforced viewport, KX-9 rotated slowly in its orbital decay around the smoldering red dwarf locals called the Smoldering Eye. The light it shed wasn't warm. It was the color of embers clinging to the last breath before extinguishing, a fitting metaphor for the station it illuminated. KX-9 had once been a bustling trade hub before the Empire came and stripped it of independence, autonomy, and soul. Now it was little more than a floating tomb with neon signs and broken dreams. Imperial banners hung like spiderwebs on every tower, flickering under artificial breezes, a staged reminder that the Empire never truly rested. But everyone here had already learned to kneel. Kale hadn't. He'd simply faded. He'd been here for 3 years, long enough to memorize the faces that didn't want to be known, long enough to build a reputation as the silent barkeep who didn't ask questions and didn't answer any either. That's what made him useful. That's what made him invisible. The door hissed open with the tired groan of neglected hydraulics. A pair of Draxian mercs stomped in, flexing their secondary arms with exaggerated menace. The scent of ozone and cheap adrenaline trailed after them. One bumped into a fragile-looking server droid, knocking it off its path. No apology followed. Kale didn't flinch. Behind them came 2 Imperial officers, crisp in regulation gray uniforms, gold epaulets gleaming in the dim lighting. Their presence drew subtle glances, but no words. Conversations quieted. Everyone knew better. Kale kept wiping the glass in his hand, eyes always moving. He wasn't just watching the room, he was measuring it. Exit points, weapon reach, reaction times, the placement of security cameras and blind spots. He did this not because he was paranoid, but because survival demanded it. And then, as always, chaos found its way in. "You lying Vexian worm," a voice bellowed from a rear booth. Chairs scraped back, a glass shattered. The unmistakable hum of a plasma cutter igniting hissed through the air like a promise of violence. Kale looked up. 2 Draxians, different from the first pair, had overturned a table and were grappling one, trying to press a blade into the other's neck. Sparks danced dangerously close to the bar's aging power conduit. The patrons glanced at Kale, waiting. He didn't yell, didn't rush. He just said no weapons. The words weren't loud, but they carried. Something about his tone carved the noise from the room. One of the mercs snarled, "Or what, bartender?" Kale set the glass down slowly. "Or I take it." And the hand holding it. A pause, thick with tension. The plasma cutter disengaged with a disappointed whine. The crowd exhaled as the fighters backed off, muttering curses. Jax, the Terrellian cook, poked his gilled head out of the kitchen. "Still got that charm," he said with a toothy grin. "Charm's overrated," Kale replied, going back to work. Outside, the plaza was stirring. A procession was being assembled. Even through the smudged glass, the movement was clear. Rows of Imperial soldiers forming ranks, large screens being erected, speakers being tested. The harsh bark of orders echoed up the steel corridors. "Festival tonight," Jax said, emerging from the back apron, tossed over one shoulder. "What are they celebrating this time?" Kale asked without looking up. Purity, Jax answered with a hint of disdain. "Annual ritual. Cleansing, they call it. Big turnout expected." "Great," Kale muttered. "More drunks." Jax chuckled. "Not just any show. This one's special. They caught an Ilanian, female, scientist apparently, fell in love with a human." Kale's hand paused mid-polish. "Yeah," Jax continued, oblivious. "Imperial Code 319 violation. Genetic impurity. Big taboo, you know. She's getting the full treatment. Public ceremony. Real spectacle." Kale resumed cleaning, but slower now. "Purple skin," they say, Jax added. "Eyes like dusk over Halon's moons." "Shame, really. Empire's got no taste." "What time?" Kale asked. Jax looked at him surprised. "Starts after shift. You thinking of going?" "No." "You sure?" Jax probed. "It's good business to close early on these nights." "Everyone's either there or watching the stream." "I'll keep it open." The bar emptied faster than usual. Most patrons had somewhere to be or at least wanted to appear compliant enough to avoid suspicion. The square outside buzzed with noise music, boots marching on steel propaganda, broadcasts repeating the same message in over a dozen dialects. Kale locked the door behind the last customer and turned toward the wide viewport. From this angle, he had a clear line of sight to the plaza. They had erected a towering ceremonial pole in the center, flanked by torch-bearing guards in full-dress armor. Drones hovered in lazy circles overhead, scanning faces and transmitting the feed across the stars. Imperial sigils glowed hot crimson on every banner. And then they brought her out, the Islanian. Even from this distance, she stood out. Her skin shimmered in the dying light like velvet twilight, stretched over elegance and defiance. Her hands were bound behind her back, her stride firm, her chin unbowed. Kale didn't recognize her, but something inside him responded. Not attraction, recognition. Not of the face, but of the posture, the defiance. The announcer's voice thundered over the plaza. Celine Nora, former xenobiologist, charged with violating imperial genetic sanctity laws, found guilty of contamination through illicit relationship with a human male. Her punishment shall be a warning to all. Celine said nothing. Her eyes scanned the crowd, not with fear, but with judgment. They hoisted her by the wrist, raising her slowly, deliberately. The crowd roared with something between excitement and bloodlust. Kale felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Heat. Not anger. Not yet. That came later. This was ignition. He looked at the half-drunk mug of coffee sitting by the counter. Still warm, still untouched. He placed it down gently, removed his apron, and walked to the door. Behind him, the bar fell silent. Outside, the Empire celebrated cruelty. But inside Kale's chest, something ancient stirred. A vow not yet spoken. A line not yet crossed. And when he stepped into the light of that crimson plaza, it wasn't just to witness history. It was to change it. The air in the plaza shimmered with synthetic heat as Kale moved through the crowd, invisible in plain sight. Years of practice had taught him how to flow, not walk, how to slip through spaces people didn't realize were empty until he was gone. The announcer's voice droned above, still extolling the Empire's commitment to genetic purity and civilized order. Most of the crowd wasn't listening. They were too busy recording, jeering, or simply watching with morbid fascination. They came for blood, or at least humiliation. The pain of others gave shape to their own safety. And there she was. Celine Nora hung from the pole like a banner in defiance of everything they wanted her to represent. Her violet skin contrasted sharply against the sterile white of the platform's banners. Her wrists were bound by translucent restraints that glowed with restraint fields, and her feet dangled inches from the ground. Yet her posture refused to yield. She didn't tremble. She didn't avert her gaze. Her chin remained high, eyes locked on the crowd as if daring them to look away. Kale stood at the edge of the circle surrounding the platform, 10 paces away, close enough to smell the ozone from the Empire's overcharged equipment, close enough to see the faint bruises along her collarbone, close enough to notice the defiance burning in her eyes like coals that refused to die. The Imperial commander stepped forward, resplendent in the ceremonial armor designed to impress more than protect. His voice boomed from hidden amplification nodes, each syllable polished and rehearsed. For the crime of genetic defilement, for choosing desire over duty, for placing self above structure, this individual shall be cleansed. Her memory will be purged, her body recalibrated. She will serve the Empire not as a person, but as a vessel of functionality. The crowd cheered. Kale's knuckles tightened, but his expression didn't change. The guards moved to prepare the cleansing device, sleek, metallic, and grotesque in its elegance. Neural scramblers, memory leeches, molecular sequencing, stabilizers all dressed up in chrome and ritual. It looked like salvation. It was erasure. And Kale had seen enough. He stepped forward. The guard closest to him noticed first. Citizen returned to designated viewing. I have a proposition, Kale said, voice flat and level. The plaza quieted. Words traveled fast when they were said with certainty. The commander turned visibly annoyed. What nonsense is this? Kale looked him in the eye. A wager. If I defeat all your guards in under a minute, you release the girl. Laughter rippled across the assembly like a wave of mockery. The commander sneered. You a barkeep? You dare mock the Empire's judgment? Kale shrugged. 59 seconds. I'm feeling generous. The commander gestured toward the guards. These are Imperial first response soldiers trained in 17 forms of combat, genetically screened for optimal performance. I'll try not to spill my coffee, Kale replied, glancing at the chronometer on his wrist. Starting now. What followed was not a fight. It was art. 4 guards charged, first thinking numbers equaled advantage. Kale moved through them like wind through tall grass. He sidestepped, the leader redirected his momentum and let him crash into the others. 3 fell without understanding why. 2 more came from behind. Kale dropped to one knee, allowing their synchronized swings to pass above his head. Rising, he elbowed one in the temple, helmet cracking with a sharp pop, then pivoted to drive his palm into the solar plexus of the other. Both dropped. 43 seconds, Kale called casually. 2 guards drew stun blasters. He weaved between the bolts like he'd danced this pattern 1,000 times. He closed the distance, disarmed them with smooth efficiency, and knocked their heads together. They collapsed like discarded puppets. 31. The remaining 4 hesitated. The commander barked, "Use lethal force." They deployed riot shields and advanced in formation, tight-trained, unyielding. Kale stepped back, measured the floor, then stomped with pinpoint precision on a maintenance panel's edge. It popped open, throwing their formation off balance. He dove between them, struck nerve junctions through their armor gaps, and left them paralyzed on the ground. 1 guard tried to flee. Kale snatched a stun baton, weighed it mid-step, and threw its sidearm. It struck the back of the man's knee with a sickening snap. The soldier toppled into an open waste disposal chute. 10 seconds to spare, Kale announced, turning toward the commander. The plaza was silent. 12 elite soldiers, gone, just like that. Kale stood unruffled, not panting, not even sweating. His sleeves were still rolled precisely to his elbows, not a fold out of place. The commander's hand twitched toward his sidearm. "I wouldn't," Kale said gently. "We made a deal." All eyes turned to Celine, still hanging, still watching. Their eyes met violet and dark brown, and something passed between them. Not recognition, but resonance, like they'd both been waiting for this moment without knowing. The commander's pride warred with self-preservation. Backing down meant humiliation. Refusing meant death. "Release her," he growled. "The Empire honors its wagers." 2 guards staggered to their feet and moved toward the pole. Kale stepped forward, but Selin raised a hand, restrained but controlled. "I can walk," she said as they lowered her. She landed on the platform, legs trembling but unbroken. Her gaze never left Kale's. Her expression was unreadable, but her voice was clear. "Why?" Kale tilted his head. "Why not?" The commander snarled. "You'll regret this, both of you, the Empire." Kale raised a finger. "Already embarrassed themselves. You don't need my help." He turned and walked away. The crowd parted before him like mist before a storm. Celine followed. They didn't speak until the noise of the plaza faded behind them. The corridors of CAC X9 stretched out in dim, flickering half-light, the kind of cheap maintenance illumination used during public events to conserve power for the spectacle. Their boots echoed softly on metal grating as they walked side by side, the crowd's silence still clinging to their skin like static. Kale's movements were fluid, purposeful, as if he'd planned this route days in advance. Selin kept pace, though her body ached from the restraints and the hours spent hanging in the artificial sun. She refused to limp. She refused to appear weak. Not in front of him, not after what she'd seen. Finally, she broke the silence. "That wasn't luck." Kale didn't slow. "No. You moved like you knew what they would do before they did it." "I did." They reached a maintenance hatch. He ran his fingers along its side until he found the recessed panel, then tapped a precise code. It opened without a sound. Celine stared. "That's not standard access." "I don't use standard routes." They slipped inside. The hallway beyond was narrower, darker, lined with old pipes and rusting conduits. The air smelled of coolant and history. Kale sealed the hatch behind them and turned on a small light strapped to his wrist. Its beam cut a narrow tunnel through the gloom. Celine studied him in the glow. His face was expressionless but not vacant. Calculating. Dangerous. Still, there was a quiet beneath it, like a storm waiting to choose whether it would rage or retreat. "Who are you?" she asked, not softly. Kale didn't answer right away. He moved forward and she followed. "I've seen ex-soldiers," she said, voice steady. "Special forces, augmented mercs, even Black Sun enforcers. But none of them move like you. Not even close." "I'm not one of them," Kale said. "No," she agreed. "You're something worse, aren't you?" They turned a corner. The passage narrowed further, forcing them close. Kale's shoulder brushed hers. He didn't react. "I was a scientist," Celine said, as if offering a truth in exchange for one. I studied cross-species genetic compatibility. My work was clean legal. Then I met Merrick, human, another researcher. We challenged the imperial model of purity. We proved that selective hybridization could enhance resilience, disease resistance, even emotional regulation. Kale glanced at her, and they rewarded you by calling you a contaminant. He betrayed me, she said simply. Turned me in for a promotion. They didn't destroy my research. They stole it, rebranded it, then used me as a warning. Kale nodded. That's the Empire's way. Celine stopped. But you didn't hesitate. 12 soldiers, 1 minute, no fear, no wasted movement, no killing, but also no mercy. He turned slowly. You've done this before? Yes. How many times? His eyes didn't blink. Enough to know when not to. She stepped closer. You're not just hiding. You're waiting. For what? Kale looked past her down the hallway. For the moment, I stopped pretending I'm not dangerous. He led them deeper into the maintenance levels. Old signs, some predating the annexation, pointed toward emergency hangars and disused docking ports. The walls bore scorch marks from forgotten skirmishes now erased from records. Dust-coated unused consoles. Spider-like repair drones crawled overhead, ignoring them. At last, they reached a security door marked with faded insignia in the number 86C. Kale keyed in another code and it groaned open. Inside was a small chamber, concrete walls, a long-dead hollow terminal, and a floor hatch partially concealed beneath a tarp. Kale pulled it open. Tunnel system, he said. Emergency egress for station VIPs. It links to an old monorail line that was sealed off after the occupation. Celine raised an eyebrow. Why do you know that? Kale didn't answer. They descended into the tunnel. The stale air tasted of neglect and cold metal. The monorail train was still there, short-armored matte black. Its power cells flickered faintly, still holding charge. You've prepared this, Celine said, not a question. Yes. For how long? 3 years. She looked at him. Since you got here? No. Since I left them. The words hung in the air like smoke. Kale activated the train. It hummed softly to life lights flickering on. He opened the passenger compartment, gestured for her to enter. She hesitated. I still don't know who you are. Kale looked at her. And that's the only reason we're both still alive. He stepped into the pilot's seat. Celine sat opposite him, folding her arms, violet eyes unblinking. Outside, the tunnel lights blinked green. The train lurched forward. As they sped into the darkness, she said, You didn't do this for me. No. Then why? He stared straight ahead. Because I'm tired of watching the Empire win. Meanwhile, back in the plaza, the commander stood rigid on the stage, his soldiers unconscious or humiliated around him. The crowd remained frozen, unsure whether to cheer, to flee, or to pretend none of it had happened. A few of them lowered their devices, no longer recording. Secure the perimeter, the commander barked, too late. Drones zipped overhead. Security bots blinked uncertainly, waiting for updated protocols. No one issued any. The plaza had become a moment of suspended disbelief, a breath held too long, a thread stretched too thin. Something had shifted, and everyone could feel it. For the first time in years, the Empire's voice faltered. Back in the train, the monorail exited into a cavernous maintenance bay, abandoned, dust-choked but functional. As they stepped out, Celine turned to him. I saw the way you calculated their movements. The trajectories, the timing. That wasn't instinct. No, it was programming. Kale didn't deny it. You're one of them, she said quietly. A weapon. I was. She stepped close, lowering her voice. Then what are you now? Kale looked at her, really looked. For a moment, his face softened. A malfunction. And then without another word, he walked toward the far wall and began opening a hidden compartment behind an old Imperial service panel. Inside, a compact pulse rifle, 2 stun charges, 3 ration packs, a beacon scrambler, and a sealed data slate with the emblem of Project EOS burned faintly into the corner. Celine inhaled sharply. Project EOS. She'd read whispers about it. Prototypes, perfect weapons, soldiers who didn't sleep, didn't feel, didn't fail, until one did. She turned toward him, a storm gathering in her chest. You're not a barkeep, she said. No, Kale replied, strapping the rifle to his back. But I make a damn good cup of coffee. The abandoned monitoring station hung in geosynchronous orbit above KX-9's largest moon, like a ghost forgotten by time. From a distance, it looked inert, just another relic of the pre-imperial era lost to neglect and cosmic dust. No power signatures, no traffic, no reason for attention, which made it perfect. The docking clamps groaned as Kale's stolen transport latched onto the side airlock. He moved with practiced speed, bypassing lockouts and initiating the pressure equalization cycle. Celine stood beside him, arms crossed, her eyes scanning every detail. "You've been here before," she said. "Yes." "Is this where you hide?" Kale looked at her. "No, this is where I rest." The inner hatch opened with a hydraulic sigh. Dim emergency lights flickered to life, bathing the interior in hues of cold blue. The corridor stretched into darkness, lined with long-dead terminals and wall panels bearing the insignia of a regime that no longer existed. Celine stepped inside and immediately felt the weight of silence. Not absence, but containment. This place had secrets, and those secrets were watching. Kale moved ahead, boots silent on metal. He bypassed a security panel with a flick of his wrist, revealing a side chamber, small functional filled with survival gear and low-consumption supplies, a cot, 2 lockers, a water recycler, a small med bay. "You've stocked this like a military forward base," Celine observed. "I used to be the military." Celine touched the wall, fingers to tracing the old etchings. She felt the faded hum of dormant power beneath the surface, just enough to maintain life support, nothing more. Efficient, cold, controlled. "Your signature is all over this place," she said. "I built it." He tossed her a ration pack. "Eat. You'll need your strength." She caught it but didn't open it. "You didn't answer my question." "I answered the one that mattered." Celine sat on the edge of the cot, the pack unopened in her lap. "So let me ask the right one. What happened to you, Kale?" He stopped back, turned, staring at an ancient holoscreen cycling static. "I woke up." "That's not a story." "It's the only one I've got." She stood. "You moved like a machine on that platform, but you spoke like a man. You calculated every strike, every angle. You knew exactly how to win without killing." "I was built to win," Kale said, voice low, "not built to care. But you do." He turned, then, eyes meeting hers. "Yes, and that's the problem." The silence stretched again, long and fragile. Finally, Celine said, "Tell me." Kale hesitated, then sat across from her, posture precise, even in repose. "I was part of a Black Ops initiative. Project EOS, Enhanced Operational Soldier. 3rd-gen prototype, cellular regeneration, kinetic mapping, neural processing enhancement. Tactical databases directly installed in the cerebral cortex. I wasn't trained, I was uploaded." Celine's breath caught. "That level of integration should have killed you." "It killed the first 32, Kale said flatly. "I was number 33, I lived." "And then, field test, colony world resisting, tax extraction. Orders were simple: eliminate infrastructure, decapitate leadership, pacify resistance. I did, efficiently." Celine's fingers curled into fists. "You murdered civilians." "I neutralized targets." The correction made her sick. Until Kale added, "I found a child, 8 years old, hiding in the ruins." She looked at me like I was death. But she wasn't afraid. She was disappointed. He looked away. She asked, "Why are you hurting everyone?" "No hate, just sadness." Celine's voice softened. "And that cracked you." "It broke everything." He stood restless. "I aborted the mission, destroyed the command ship, went dark, erased myself from Imperial networks. I've been hiding ever since. Until me." Kale met her gaze again. "You stood on that platform like that child, broken but unbowed. I couldn't let them erase that again." Celine stepped closer. "You felt something." "I remembered how to feel," he admitted. "And now?" she asked. "Now I remember why I stopped." A proximity alarm chirped from the wall. Kale was instantly alert, grabbing the pulse rifle. "What is it?" Celine asked. "Imperial scan sweep. Just a scout drone. We're still cloaked." He silenced the alert and turned back to her. "They're looking for you." "For us," she corrected. Kale's expression flickered. "I'm the malfunction. You're the contamination. We make a lovely pair." His lips twitched, almost a smile. She moved closer. "Are you afraid of what we represent?" "I'm afraid of what we could cost each other." Celine's bioluminescent markings glowed softly, reacting to his proximity. She reached out, fingertips brushing his arm. "I saw how you fought without killing. I saw how you let yourself be seen." Kale closed his eyes. "You're not a malfunction," she said. "You're a prototype that chose its own code." He exhaled slowly. "That's what terrifies them most." Celine leaned in. "Good." Outside, the stars wheeled silently. Inside the forgotten station, a soldier born without a soul and a scientist condemned for love stood facing each other across the gulf of everything they had lost and everything they might still become. Celine didn't sleep that night, not truly. The cot in the auxiliary room was adequate Spartan, but functional, but her mind refused to settle. The station hummed faintly, ancient machinery thrumming with the rhythm of a forgotten age. A heartbeat made of wires and forgotten protocols. She rose after the third hour, drawn by a soft light leaking through the hatch, leading to the observation dome. She found him there. Kale sat cross-legged on the floor facing the stars. The dome overhead was a transparent bubble giving a clear view of the galaxy beyond. The stars shone cold and endless, merciless in their beauty. He didn't turn when she entered. "Still watching me. Still wondering what you're made of," she answered. He gave a small nod. "So am I." She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the cold metal floor. The silence wasn't tense this time. It was heavy with knowing. "I accessed the station's local archive," she said. "Had to bypass 4 layers of encryption." Kale's lips twitched. "You broke into my library. I'm a scientist. It's in my nature." She crouched beside him, holding up a small datapad. Project EOS. His posture stiffened slightly. Not fear, readiness. "Most of it was redacted," she continued. "But I found references. Generation 3. Enhanced operational soldier. Fully integrated tactical processing. Psychological firewalls. Neural accelerants. Your brain isn't just fast, it's predictive. Go on." According to what little remains, EOS prototypes weren't supposed to survive long. Degradation, psychosis, cellular breakdown. But there was one anomaly. She turned the screen toward him. Prototype Chaos 033, codename Reiner. He said nothing. Celine studied his face. It wasn't just the girl, was it, that triggered your break? It was something already fractured. Kale exhaled through his nose. "I started asking questions I wasn't programmed to ask, and I didn't like the answers. About the Empire, about myself." He finally looked at her. "About what it meant to follow orders perfectly, to execute commands without pausing to wonder if they deserved execution." Celine sat beside him, the datapad resting on her knees. "Why keep hiding?" she asked. "Why not fight?" "Because fighting alone isn't winning," Kale said. "I became good at killing, too good. And I feared what would happen if I started enjoying it again." She was quiet for a long time. "Killing the guards back on the platform? You could have. I didn't want to show them what I really am." Celine's voice was almost a whisper. "And what are you?" Kale's reply came slowly. "A weapon that learned how to hesitate." They sat together, the dome filled with starlight. "I was going to be wiped," she said. "Neural scrubbing, memory fracture, personality erasure." "I know," he replied. "And yet you wagered your life in front of an entire crowd for someone you didn't know." "I recognized your eyes." Celine turned to him. "You'd never seen me before." "No," Kale agreed. "But I'd seen what the Empire does to people like you. The strong, the unyielding, the ones who won't bend to their idea of what's acceptable. Like you," she said. "Like the girl I used to be," he said quietly, "before they built me into this." Celine's bioluminescent markings pulsed faintly along her temples. "Do you regret it?" "I regret waiting this long to stop pretending." She nodded, absorbing that. Then came the alert. A klaxon chirped twice short, sharp, unmistakable. Kale was on his feet instantly, all softness vanished. Scan sweep again. Multiple contacts this time, one drone long-range pattern wide. Celine stood as well. "Are we cloaked?" "Yes, but they're triangulating. Slow sweep. That means they suspect we're close. They're looking for us." "No," Kale said, adjusting the controls, jaw tight. "They're looking for me. You're collateral." Celine stared at him, her violet eyes narrowing. "You really think that? They know I survived. They know what I am. They want their prototype back. You're just an inconvenient witness." She stepped in front of him. "You don't get to decide what I am to them or to you." Kale's gaze was hard. "If they catch us both, you get a neural lobotomy. I get dissected alive. Those are the facts. Then we do what you were built for," Celine said. "We change the outcome." He looked at her, then at the blinking red dots on the screen, 3 drones approaching, slow but inevitable. "I have one last trick," he said. "A bait signal. I can route false heat signatures through the station's abandoned thermal vents. If they believe it, they'll focus their scans somewhere else. And if they don't, then we run." She nodded. "Show me how to help." For the next 15 minutes, they worked in silence. Kale routed power from non-essential systems, rerouted conduits, and synchronized his signals with the drone's sweep intervals. Celine calculated signal attenuation through various densities of hull plating. Their minds moved differently but together, like data flowing in parallel threads. They're buying it, Kale said as the drone altered its course, shifting toward the empty vent sector. Celine exhaled. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less, but it's something. She looked at him. You were never supposed to think this far ahead, were you? No, they didn't program me for fear, but you feel it. Kale met her eyes. Because I finally have something to lose. The words hung between them, not fragile, but dense. Celine reached forward and touched his chest-flat palm directly over his heart. Then don't run from it. He covered her hand with his. Not anymore. The emergency lighting flickered once, briefly dimming the corridor. Celine stood against the wall, arms crossed, as Kale finished recalibrating the signal dampeners. The hum of the station's systems buzzed faintly beneath their feet like an old engine trying not to draw attention to itself. Outside, 3 Imperial drones scanned in wide, deliberate arcs, hunting, calculating, and for now deceived. But both of them knew the deception wouldn't hold forever. Celine watched him work, fluid, precise, quiet. He moved with mechanical grace, but everything he did was driven by instinct, layered atop programming. He was human and something else. Something created but not fully controlled. You're different now, she said, voice soft. Kale didn't turn. How? You're hesitating less. Not about killing, but about being seen. He paused. I stopped running the moment I saw you on that pole. Celine walked toward him, boots echoing softly on the steel floor. Do you know what I thought when they hoisted me up there? He looked at her. I thought, let them see me burn and know I never bowed. She smiled faintly. But then you stepped out of that crowd, calm as gravity. You didn't come like a savior. You came like a decision. Kale didn't reply. His hands moved across the console with unnecessary slowness. I've never trusted a man who didn't flinch at plasma fire, she added. I've never trusted anyone who smiled under threat of erasure. Her eyes sparkled. Then we're even. They stood in silence, just far enough apart for the tension to become tangible. Kale. He looked up. Are you still afraid of what they made you? He held her gaze. I'm more afraid of what I'll do if they hurt you. Celine's bioluminescent markings brightened suddenly, a soft violet glow pulsing along her cheekbones and temples. Her kind had evolved to express emotion through light, and in that moment she was radiant. She stepped close, too close. Their breath mingled. You could have left me there, she said. I couldn't. Why? He hesitated. Celine's fingers brushed his jaw. Say it. I don't know what this is, he admitted. It's not protocol, she whispered, and it's not safe. No. Then let's do it anyway. Her lips met his. At first the kiss was cautious. 2 people trained to survive, not to feel, trying to remember how to surrender. Then it deepened, not out of passion alone, but out of recognition. Out of the silent scream of 2 beings who had been broken and rebuilt and still found one another worthy. His hands settled at her back, strong but careful. Hers traced the edges of his reinforced ribs, feeling the tension beneath metal-threaded muscle. He could have crushed her. She could have read him like a data slab. But instead they just held each other. No empire, no mission, no programming. Just this. Just now. Just them. Then came the alert. Proximity breach. The station's internal sensors lit up like veins in a dying body. Kale broke away first. His posture snapped back into combat readiness before the final syllable had even echoed. We're compromised. Celine already had the beacon scrambler in her hands. Can we jam though? Too late. They dropped out of stealth inside range. This wasn't a sweep. This was a lock. How? They got lucky, he growled. Or someone got sloppy. She didn't flinch at the implied accusation. What now? We run. Docking Base 7. I have a secondary ship. They moved together, swift and synchronized. Down the corridor past the living quarters and med console lights flashing red with each step. As they entered the loading corridor, the sound of a pressure breach boomed through the structure. Then came the heavy stomp of armored boots. Kale cursed under his breath. Commandos. Celine turned to him. Go. I'm not leaving you. You have to. You're what they're here for. And you're what I'm here for, he snapped. Before she could argue again, a panel to their left exploded outward. A small drone, a hunter-seeker model, screeched into the hallway, scanning for life signs. Kale reacted instantly. He drew his pulse sidearm, aimed, and fired 3 rapid shots. The first two were distractions. The third disabled the drone mid-spin. But behind it came four Imperial commandos. Black armor, full tactical HUDs, pulse rifles already tracking, formation tight. The lead officer shouted, "Project EOS, you are ordered to surrender. Subject Nora is to be detained for erasure and genetic cleansing." Kale's expression turned cold. Celine reached for her emergency disruptor, only to find Kale already moving. He didn't lunge, he unfolded. In the space of a breath, he was among them. His first strike shattered the faceplate of the nearest soldier. A second tore the weapon from the hands of another. He used it to disable the drone still hovering at their backs. Two down. The third tried to flank. Kale caught his forearm mid-swing and twisted with surgical precision. A crack, a scream, a thud. The fourth was smarter. He backed up and raised his rifle. Too slow. Kale moved faster than reflex. He snatched a discarded power cell from the floor, threw it, and struck the soldier's helmet with enough force to drop him unconscious. Celine blinked. 6 seconds. It had taken 6 seconds. Kale stood over the body's chest, rising slow like a machine cooling. Celine stepped beside him. "You okay?" He turned. "They're learning. That formation was tighter than last time." "You mean there's going to be another last time?" Kale smirked. "There always is." They raced down the last hallway to Docking Bay 7. The ship waited sleek and silent, a small stealth shuttle built for insertion and evasion. Celine climbed into the co-pilot seat while Kale sealed the bay doors behind them. The ship powered up with a low hum. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Anywhere that isn't here." "Coordinates." He punched them in. As the ship rose from the bay floor, the station behind them began to collapse remote detonated charges Kale had planted months ago just in case. Celine looked back. "You destroyed him." "They turn it into a trap," he said. "Better a tomb." As the ship jumped to light speed, Celine leaned back in her seat. Her hand found his. "Next time we kiss," she murmured, "can we not be running?" Kale gave her a sidelong glance. "We're always running." She squeezed his hand. "Then next time, we stop." He didn't reply, but he didn't let go. The Imperial Dreadnought. Inevitable justice hovered in synchronous orbit above Nexus Prime, its hull blotting out stars like a godless eclipse. Below, the capital city prepared for the ritual cleansing. Screens across plazas, stations, homes, even slave mines broadcast the feed in real time. Viewers across 1,000 worlds were expected to tune in. Celine Nora was strapped into a neural recalibration harness, her head locked into the memory wipe brace. Her violet skin had lost its glow, replaced by the dull sheen of exhaustion. But her eyes, gods, her eyes still burned. The Inquisitor, draped in ceremonial robes the color of dried blood, stepped before the camera drone. "Citizens of the Empire," he intoned, "today, we demonstrate the consequences of deviation." He gestured dramatically towards Celine. "This creature, once a respected scientist, violated the sanctity of our species through illicit union. For her betrayal, she shall be cleansed. Her mind will be wiped, her form repurposed. She will be reborn obedient and pure." Across the galaxy, millions watched. In the shadowed corner of the hangar deck, Kale crouched beneath a maintenance scaffold, pulse weapon in one hand, micro-scrambler in the other. His stealth suit flickered faintly around him, bending light and heat. He'd breached the Dreadnought's hull minutes ago. He'd bypassed 3 security layers. Now only one chamber stood between him and the woman whose defiance had changed everything. He whispered into his comm, "Celine, you still with me?" Her voice was faint but unbroken. "Barely. They're initializing neural link. My short-term memory will go first. Then I'll make it fast." "No," she murmured. "Make it loud." Kale smiled grimly. "Copy that." He moved. 3 guards outside the ceremonial chamber turned as the door control flashed red. It never opened. Instead, it exploded inward. Smoke filled the corridor. Kale strode through it like retribution incarnate. One guard raised his weapon. Kale disarmed him with a shoulder check that shattered ribs. The second fired. Kale twisted, letting the bolt graze his armor, then drove a stun baton into the man's throat. The third turned to run. A thrown blade dropped him before he reached the corner. Inside the chamber, panic erupted. The Inquisitor stepped back from the altar, spitting orders. Technicians scrambled. The neural scrubber whirred to life. Celine screamed, not in pain, but as a signal. Then the doors behind her blew apart. The camera drone swerved to catch the commotion. Kale emerged, black suit, torn eyes glowing faintly from implant overdrive. He moved like a monster birthed from every nightmare the Empire ever tried to suppress. Every motion was calculated, every blow surgical. He reached the control panel, ripped it from the wall, and crushed it underfoot. The machine whine sparked and died. Celine gasped as the neural field deactivated, her head slumping forward. Kale was at her side in a flash, unfastening the restraints with hands that trembled only slightly. "You came," she whispered. "You were already burning down the Empire," he said. "I just came to aim the fire." The Inquisitor recovered, drawing a plasma glaive. "You, abomination." Kale rose slowly, turning to face him. The camera drone hovered nearby, still streaming. "Let it roll," Kale said loud and clear. He stepped toward the Inquisitor. "I am Project EOS." His voice echoed raw with unfiltered rage and clarity. "The Empire's perfect weapon. Built to obey, trained to kill, programmed to never ask why." The Inquisitor charged. Kale sidestepped effortlessly and struck with an open palm to the sternum. The glaive clattered to the floor. The Inquisitor wheezed, crumpling to his knees. Kale grabbed him by the collar, turned him to face the drone. "But I asked anyway. I asked why we kill what we fear. Why love is punished. Why purity is dictated by tyrants." He threw the man into a row of servers. Sparks erupted. Kale turned on back to the camera, lifting Celine gently from the altar. "They tried to erase her for loving someone they didn't approve of," he said. "But she never bowed. And now everyone watching knows why they fear her." Security klaxons screamed as automated defense turrets descended from the ceiling. Kale's sensors picked them up in his periphery. He didn't flinch. They fear what they can't control. He fired without turning. 2 shots. 2 destroyed turrets. The chamber echoed with the sound of righteous defiance. "They fear me," he continued, voice low and dark, "because I walked away." Then, carrying Celine like a soldier rescuing a fallen comrade, he moved toward the exit. "They fear you," he added, "because now you know what they are." He looked directly into the lens. "We're not coming back. We're coming through." Then he shot the camera. 37 minutes later, the galactic net burned. The footage, raw uncut, spread like wildfire. It was replayed on civilian channels before Imperial censors could suppress it. A barkeep turned demon defeating elite soldiers with inhuman grace. A violet-skinned woman enduring torture with dignity. A declaration of rebellion, not in code or rhetoric, but in blood and fire and love. On mining colonies, slaves cheered. In military academies, cadets whispered. In the Imperial throne chamber, clenched fists shook. Aboard a smuggler ship skimming hyperspace, Celine lay wrapped in a thermal blanket, her head resting against Kale's chest. His arm remained wrapped around her, steady, unmoving, as if anchoring her to the moment. "Your heartbeat," she said softly. "What about it?" "It's faster than it should be." "I'm not optimized for rest," he muttered. She looked up. "Then maybe it's not fear." Kale didn't answer. She shifted her fingers, finding his hand. "You told them what they needed to hear." "I told them what I was afraid of." "And what's that?" He looked down at her. "That they'd never believe someone like me could care." Celine smiled. "You didn't just care, Kale, you broadcast it to the stars." He exhaled, the ghost of a laugh escaping his lips. "They're going to hunt us." "They already were." Kale stared into the warp stream outside the viewport. "We just gave them a reason to be scared." Celine leaned into him, her eyes slipping closed. "Then let's give them 1,000 more." 10 years later. The world was different now. Not free, not yet, but different. The Empire still held star systems in its clenched iron grip, but cracks spiderwebbed through its core. Defections, sabotage, independent colonies declaring themselves sovereign, and beneath it all, a whisper that echoed across galaxies. "We're not coming back, we're coming through." Kale heard it every time a hidden terminal blinked to life in a resistance outpost. He sat now beneath a sky of unfamiliar stars on a world without a name. The air was rich with ozone and pine-like scents, and twin moons cast silver light over the forest clearing where he'd built his home. Beside him, a campfire crackled. The smell of roasted grain and synthetic meat mingled in the air. Celine emerged from the small dome shelter, carrying a sleeping child wrapped in a soft woven cloak. Her bioluminescent tattoos had faded with age, but not with power. If anything, she seemed more alive now, rooted, purposeful. "He finally passed out," she said softly. Kale took the child from her with practiced ease. "He's getting heavier. He's 5. He's gonna break my ribs." Celine sat beside him and leaned into his side. The child Lio stirred briefly in Kale's arms, then sighed and returned to sleep. You think they're close? Seelan asked, voice low. They intercepted a shipment near Proxima Drift last week. That's only 6 sectors away. Empire, most likely. She nodded. We have to move soon. Tomorrow, Kale agreed. They fell into silence, their little fire burning against the weight of galaxies. Celine broke it first. Do you regret him? He looked down at the boy in his arms. No. Even with the danger. Especially because of it. She touched his arm. He asked about you, you know. About what you were. Kale stiffened slightly. Celine continued. He says the others whisper that you were a monster. Kale looked into the flames. Maybe I was. Do you want him to believe that? I want him to believe I changed. She smiled. Then tell him that. Show him. A rustle from the woods caught both their attention. Kale was on his feet and a blink child tucked protectively against him, pistol drawn with the other hand. Celine didn't move. Friend or foe? A voice answered from the darkness. Depends. You still owe me a drink, Kale. The man who stepped into the firelight wore a tattered pilot jacket and a crooked grin. His name was Yorn, a smuggler, saboteur, sometimes saint. A friend from a lifetime ago. Kale lowered the pistol. You're late. I had to reroute. Half the galaxy wants your head. Half isn't bad, Celine said dryly. Jorn's grin widened. Got news. He tossed a data chip into Kale's free hand. Transmission logs from Sector 14. Looks like your little broadcast back then spawned more than rumors. Kale inserted the chip into a portable reader. Lines of data scrolled rapidly, encrypted messages, resistance chatter, local revolts. Some of these are military deserters, he murmured. Some are former inquisitors, Jorn added. Looks like your speech hit harder than anyone thought. Celine rose beside him, her hand finding Kale's. You're not just a legend anymore, she said. You're a seed. Kale watched the fire dance in Leo's peaceful face. A weapon that became a father, he said softly. Wrong, Sullen whispered. A man who chose not to be a weapon anymore. Jorn glanced toward the sky. You ready to move? Yeah, Kale said. Let's go home. Jorn blinked. I thought this was home. No, Kale replied, watching the stars. Home is the place where my son doesn't have to run. They packed quickly. The shelter collapsed into a portable cube. The campfire was doused. The ship, camouflaged under a sheet of thermal disruptive foliage, woke with a gentle whine. Leo stirred in Kale's arms, yawning as he opened his eyes. Are we flying again, Papa? Yes, Kale said, voice steady, but this time somewhere better. Is Mama coming too? Celine ruffled the boy's hair. Always. They strapped in the cockpit, bathed in warm light. As the ship lifted, the forest below shrank to shadow. Ahead of them lay an uncharted path. Not a battlefield, not a graveyard, but a future. And on every resistance frequency, in every hidden outpost, in every cracked data pad, from here to the galactic core, a phrase had become gospel. They tried to erase her for love. He came back for her with fire, and now we rise.